They laughed when I walked in wearing those old shoes, but they had no idea I owned the building they were partying in. It was my cousin's engagement. Everyone from the extended family was there, dressed up, loud, fake smiles. I hadn't seen most of them in years, and honestly, they didn't care to see me either. My uncle whispered something, and the whole table laughed while looking at me. I could tell. Same old story, poor, struggling, loser me. I quietly grabbed a soda and stood near the corner like I always did, invisible but observing. If you're still watching, this story's about revenge, silence, and a shocking comeback they never saw coming. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, because trust me, you won't believe where this goes. 15 years ago, I walked out of this toxic family with nothing but a backpack and a broken heart. They called me a failure when I dropped out of college. My mom cried. My dad didn't speak to me for weeks. My cousins? They laughed. He'll come crawling back in a few months, they said. But I didn't. I vanished from every WhatsApp group, stopped showing up at weddings, birthdays, everything. Silence. They thought I disappeared. They were wrong. What I did was work, day and night. I lived in a tiny apartment in a bad part of the city, ate noodles for months, and built a business from scratch. No loans, no help, just obsession. And while they were busy posting reels and family dinners, I was building an empire behind closed doors. Real estate, technology, crypto. I didn't tell anyone, not even my parents, not yet. So when I showed up today in my old shirt and scratched watch, it wasn't an accident. It was the plan. Let them laugh. Let them mock. Because what they didn't know is that this engagement hall, I bought it 6 months ago. The moment that changed everything came when the DJ's mic cut out mid-announcement. People were confused. Lights flickered, the music stopped, and all eyes turned toward the stage. Then the manager walked in, whispering something to the groom's father, my uncle, the same one who mocked me earlier. His smile vanished. He looked around, panic on his face, then pointed at me. That's when the murmurs began. Why's he talking to him? Is he in trouble? Did something happen to the venue? I stayed quiet, sipping my soda, acting clueless. My uncle stomped over, voice shaking. What's going on? They said you need to authorize something? I looked him in the eye for the first time in years. Yeah, there's a payment pending, and the owner doesn't allow events to continue without it. You? You're the owner? He almost laughed. I smiled. I don't just own this building. I own the next 3 blocks. Gasps. Silence. My aunt dropped her glass. My cousins froze. One of them, Raza, the same guy who used to steal my lunch in school, spoke up. Wait, are you serious? Since when? I looked around the hall, leaned in a little, and said, since the day you all stopped believing in me? No one moved. No one blinked. And then came the twist that crushed them even harder. I didn't come here for the food. I came to finalize a deal with the hotel chain buying this property. This is the last event here. After tonight, this building's coming down. Their dream party? Their big celebration? It just turned into their biggest nightmare. The chaos started instantly. My uncle's face turned red. You can't do that. We booked this place months ago. I stayed calm. You booked it from my manager, not knowing he works for me. My aunt tried to step in, fake sweet. Beta, listen, this is a family function. Don't ruin it. I smiled, just enough to sting. You ruined family a long time ago. The whispers became louder. Guests began asking questions. Some even pulled out their phones, recording. My cousin, the groom, walked up, embarrassed. Please don't do this. At least let us finish tonight. His voice was softer than I remembered. Less arrogant now. I could have ended it right there. I could have said no and shut everything down. But I didn't. Fine, I said. You can finish the night. But tomorrow morning at 8 a.m., demolition starts. Then I looked at my uncle. Make sure you're done cleaning up by then. And just like that, I walked out. Outside, my driver opened the door to my matte black Mercedes Maybach. One of my companies, one they thought went bankrupt, actually funded a luxury car import business. It's made me millions quietly. As we drove off, I got a call from my assistant. Sir, the beachfront property in Dubai is confirmed. Paperwork ready for signature. Perfect, I said, leaning back. We'll fly out first thing tomorrow. Meanwhile, inside the hall, they were still trying to make the engagement look happy for Instagram. But you could feel the tension. No amount of fairy lights could hide that they were celebrating on top of a secret ticking bomb. They had spent years laughing behind my back. Now, they were dancing on my land. 2 days later, the video clips from the engagement started going viral. Someone had recorded the confrontation. It was all over TikTok, Instagram, even Twitter. The comments were brutal. POV, you mock the quiet cousin who ends up owning the building. Rich in silence, revenge in style. Never underestimate the guy who disappears for a few years. Within 48 hours, the clip had 3.2 million views. But back at home, things weren't as entertaining. My phone started blowing up. Messages from cousins I hadn't spoken to in a decade. Suddenly, they remembered I existed. One of them, Shabazz, the loudmouth, texted, Bro, that was epic. You gotta tell me how you pulled that off. Let's catch up. I didn't reply. I just blocked him. Then came the guilt calls from my mother. They're saying you embarrassed the family, that you should have handled it differently. I paused. Did they ever feel guilty for calling me a disgrace? For not inviting me to family weddings? For pretending I didn't exist? Silence. Beta, you were always different. We didn't know you'd turn into this. Number they didn't know. That's the point. They thought silence meant failure, that disappearing meant defeat. But in reality, silence was my weapon. I used every second of being ignored to build something untouchable. You see, what they still didn't know, what nobody knew, was that the engagement party wasn't the end of my plan. It was just step one. That land they danced on, I didn't just buy it for the hall. I bought the entire street, and I'd spent the last year quietly buying out surrounding properties, shops, flats, and rental units, slowly, piece by piece, through shell companies and proxies, so no one suspected. Why? Because every single one of those relatives either rents, works, or runs a business somewhere on that street. And very soon, they'd all be getting eviction notices. But I wasn't doing it out of hate. I wasn't even doing it to crush them. I was doing it for me, because sometimes peace only comes when the past is cleared out completely. And they were my past. 3 weeks later, the demolition began. Bulldozers tore through the old buildings. The hall was the first to go. Then the storefronts. Then the tiny apartment blocks where some of my distant relatives lived. The street would be cleared within months, making space for my next project, a $1 billion commercial tech plaza, offices, showrooms, rooftop lounges, and a luxury penthouse at the top. My new headquarters. One evening, as I stood on a nearby rooftop watching the dust rise, my old classmate Faizan called. Bro, the family is losing it. They finally know it's you. The uncles are panicking. The cousins are bitter. You destroyed them. I lit a cigar. I didn't destroy them, I said. I just let the truth do its job. He laughed. And the truth? That I was never the failure. I was the storm they never saw coming. A month later, the grand opening of my new tech plaza was announced, and the entire city was buzzing. Billboards lit up, influencers posted sneak peeks, news outlets called it the future of business in the heart of the city. What nobody knew was how personal this project really was. Every inch of that land carried memories of humiliation, of silence, of being looked down on. Now it carried something else: power. On the top floor in my glass-walled penthouse office, I sat across from an old man, my father. He hadn't spoken much during the tour, just kept looking around in disbelief. You really built all this? He finally asked. I nodded. Every brick. He stared out the window at the skyline. Then he said something I never expected. I was wrong. We all were. We thought silence meant weakness. But you were just building louder than we could hear. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Because for the first time in my life, I didn't need their validation. Their acceptance didn't matter anymore. I had already won. But then came the final twist, one I had planned quietly all along. Instead of kicking everyone out completely, I made a move no one expected. I called in the same cousins who once mocked me and offered them jobs, not high-paying roles, but internships, starting from scratch under strict rules, under my managers. Some refused, their pride too thick. Others accepted, swallowing their ego. Either way, they now lived in a world I controlled, not for revenge, for the message. Sometimes the best revenge isn't crushing them, it's watching them realize you became everything they said you never could be. As I sat back, sipping my espresso, watching them enter through the same doors they once said I'd never walk through, I smiled. They had spent 15 years writing me off. Now, I owned the page they wrote on. And that silence they once mocked, it turned out to be the loudest flex of all.